Hey guys, welcome to What's Up Wednesday. My name's Heather. This is my page. It starts with the food. Today we're going to talk about what's on my blog post, and that's purse nuts and other stories from the edge. I have to laugh just because it was probably one of the lowest moments of my life and the most exciting when I found my nuts, but I'll tell you about that in a minute. The other thing that I'm going to be sharing tonight is why working out isn't always the answer, why working out more isn't always the answer. I know for myself, that was my default. If I had cookies or chips or something, I would just work out more in the gym. That's not always the answer. Usually you're doing more harm than good. So let's start with the blog post, Purse Nuts and Other Stories from the Edge. If you haven't had a chance to get over to itstartswiththefood.com and see my blog post, which comes out every Wednesday morning, today I talk about this act of desperation that I found myself partaking in. A couple weeks ago, I was with my youngest teen and we were out running errands. We had a doctor's appointment. Of course, the doctor was running really late. And then we got caught in some early day traffic on our beautiful I-4 corridor. And I realized as we were sitting in traffic and my head was starting to pound and I was starting to get sweaty palms and starting to get really aggravated and snarky, that I was going into 21 hours of fasting. Now, I do the ketogenic lifestyle and I also incorporate intermittent fasting with that. And usually my fasting sweet spot is somewhere between 18 and 19 hours. That's just what I've found over the last 2.5 years that's worked really well for me. Sometimes I'll go 20, 21 hours, 22 hours if I'm like trying to detox or I'm sick and I know that my body needs some rest and to reboot, I'll do a liquid fast. But when I'm doing a prolonged fast like that, I always prepare and plan for it. The night before, the day before, I make sure that my diet is filled with lots of good fats and that I'm getting what I need to sustain me through that longer period of time. But that takes prepping and planning, and I'm usually pretty good about that. And I usually plan for these emergency moments when I'm out and about and I really didn't plan to be out that long. I usually have nuts in a baggie in my purse for just that reason. But prepping and planning failed, and my purse nuts weren't there. But what I found instead, as I was digging frantically, knowing that I had to have them because I always had them, I guess I must have forgotten the last time I found myself in that emergency situation. I had depleted my stash. But what I did find was some free floating nuts at the bottom of my purse. And I knew that they couldn't have been there for very long because I had just had almonds in my bag just that a couple weeks beforehand. And before that, it was pistachios. So I grabbed them and I blew them off and I looked at my son and he looked at me with wide eyes like, are you really going to eat those? And I started popping them in my mouth. Was not a proud moment. It was probably a low point. But at the same time, I was like, you know, that's why I planned. That's why I have purse nuts. But purse nuts took on a whole new meaning, like they were actually part of the purse. But I did get home and I got to eat and it got me through, and it also gave me a laugh and it gave me some real clarity of making sure that when I do dig into my stash, that the minute I get back home, I need to re-up because I don't know when that could happen again. So that was one of my acts of desperation. I've had many, and I'm going to share those along with you as I go. But that was the most recent, and I felt like it was the most appropriate, especially with what's going on right now with me. I don't know if you can see the background, but I'm in the process of moving. And if anybody's moved anytime recently, you know how stressful it can be and how you're running and gunning and going. And if you're doing any kind of fasting, you want to make sure that you've got some food. So when you're in between houses or packing boxes, you've got something to reach for. I like nuts personally, just because I don't usually eat nuts every day. I make sure to put them in a serving size. The serving size for nuts is generally a quarter cup. Nuts are really one of those things that are too easy to eat mindlessly. So if you don't, or at least if I don't portion them out, I could eat a whole bag in one sitting. And they're great for fats. They're great for getting you through like emergency times, but if you rely on them too much, they are carb heavy and calorie heavy, even though I don't count calories. If that's all you're eating, you're not probably eating the other things like the vegetables and all of the fats and the other forms like coconut oil, olive oil, etc. So that's why nuts are great for that. And they're portable. You stick them in a snack size baggie and go. That's the beauty of them. So I wanted to share that. I also wanted to touch on how working out working out more. I think working out in general is great. I think that we all need to move. But I think that for me personally, my experience with working out for such a long period of time was so negative. I would spend 2 hours a day in the gym, 6 days a week. I would do cardio. I would do weightlifting. I would do Zumba, and that was not pretty. I'm very clumsy, and getting in a Zumba class, and I have no rhythm. I'm should not be anywhere near a class full of people actually dancing and doing it that looks like what the instructor's doing. That was not me. So I would do all that, change it all up, and I was religious about it. And I would go home and I would eat my 1,200 calories, and I knew that 17 organic tortilla chips were exactly 170 calories. So I was really diligent, but I was looking for weight loss, and that wasn't happening, and it never happened for me. But what I did find was that the belly fat, even though I was working out so hard and I was only eating 1,200 calories and all of that stuff, I still was having this spare tire around my stomach, and it was really discouraging. And so I had a bitter breakup with my gym, and I just don't look back. But I do think yoga is great. I like walking. I like swimming. There's certain things that I like to do. But I really caution people, because a lot of people that come to me are hardcore, they're in the gym, they're desperate. It's almost desperation. Gym workouts of God, I've got to get this weight off. I've got to work off that cookie or that bag of chips. And most of the time, working out more is actually counterproductive. Putting your body in a prolonged state of stress, like doing 60 minutes of cardio, causes the body to produce cortisol, because it's a fight or flight reaction. The body doesn't know the difference. The body doesn't know that you're in the gym working out because you're trying to lose weight or trying to be healthy, or both. All it knows is that it's a stress reaction, and that stress is coming from your heart pumping and racing, which is what happens when you're in a fight or flight situation, and it produces cortisol. Cortisol has a place, and it's needed, but unfortunately most of us are walking around in heightened states of stress anyway, and then you put us into the gym working out hardcore 60-minute cardio workouts. That's a lot of stress, and so that cortisol ends up being produced even more, and it creates belly fat. So the thing that you think you're doing to help yourself is probably hurting. The other thing too, when you're focusing so much on cardio, if you want to do cardio, cardio is great, but doing 20 minutes of interval training where you do 2 minutes on high and 30 seconds on low, and do that for 20 minutes, that is a way better workout, and it's much faster, and you'll actually get what you're looking for out of that. But when you do put your body in that state of heightened stress, you're going to have high blood pressure. That's going to be one of the symptoms. You're going to suppress your thyroid function. You're going to lower your immunity, and again, the belly. So it's not always a good thing. I think if you love working out, you can absolutely find a way to get that happy medium where you're doing just enough to give your body what it needs without putting a whole lot of stress on your body and mentally. I mean, I know the stress that I would feel every time I would go to the gym and then get on the scale. The focus was fully on how much am I getting out of what I'm putting in? How much effort am I putting into the gym, and am I seeing it on the scale? And I wasn't, and it was defeating, and I felt wrong. I felt bad. I felt I felt like there was something wrong with me. And if you can relate, you might want to look at what you're doing and take it easy on yourself, and know that you're not alone, that this is pretty normal. But that's pretty much it. That's my tip for the week. It's also my story for the week. If you've got some acts of desperation and stories from the edge, I would love to hear them, because I know I'm not the only one out there eating purse nuts. I'm sure that there's a few of you that have had something way worse, and I would really love to hear it, and I'm sure we would all love to hear it. So next week, I'll be still moving, but I'm going to come back with another tip, another strategy for you for weight loss and for health stuff, and to give you some more guidance into maybe the ketogenic and intermittent fasting side. I know I get a lot of questions on the intermittent fasting. I get a lot of resistance from the intermittent fasting from people until they start doing it. But knowing how to do it instead of just jumping into it is really the key in doing it in a way where it isn't stressful. Because again, stress can come from all different angles. And if you're stressing out and putting your body in a state of starvation, that's stress too. So we don't want to do that. There's ways to ease into it. There's ways to really be a high functioning faster. So come join me next week. I can't wait to see you guys. I can't wait to see your stories in here. Please share. I am sure we would all get a laugh. And you can be anonymous if you want, if you can be anonymous on Facebook. I'm not sure. Until next week, take care.